I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. And this is part 5 of how to make a bezel setting for a faceted stone.
Really important part of bezel making is you do one curve at a time. Once it fits, feel free to go on. The biggest mistake is to be like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? And you keep going. And then you have multiple places you have to fix. Everything you fix changes everything else. You become the dog chasing your tail around and around and around, and you go mental. Don't do that. So that's why I always I make the first bend, we make sure it's right, and then we'll work our way around. Now, the second issue is about math. And you do see this in a lot of jewelry books. I teach the way that I teach because I believe it's the easiest and most practical. People will have differing opinions, of course. They'll be wrong, but we'll let them live. But what I have realized is that people think that it makes sense to measure and cut your strip ahead of time exactly right. Now, that is the hardest way to do it and the most inaccurate because very few stones are actually a perfect shape. You know what I mean? It may be round, but is it, a perfect circle, a perfect oval? What kind of oval? A skinny oval, a fat, you know what I mean? All those things. You also have to take into account the thickness of your metal and add that to it. So what I find is that it's actually way more accurate to fit than to measure. Do you know what I mean? Just bend and try, and I find that with almost everything. It's not that I don't use math. I use math, but it's sort of like a trick of our brain. It seems like that's the right way to do it, but actually it makes it much more difficult. Also, if you were to cut this exactly right and then you're trying to check it, you don't have any extra to hold on to. So you've got just enough. It's super irritating. Do it sometime. You will hate it.
Yes. Been there, done that.
Yeah, no, literally. You'll just be like, I hate my life. I never want to do this again. It's terrible. That's why when I do this normally, I just cut a long strip, whatever I have left, I trim off, I'll use it for something else. If I'm not sure I have enough, you can always use the sort of concept of pi, is this generally going to be long enough? Take 3 plus, 3.14 times the circumference of your stone. I'm not usually doing that. I'm just usually taking my stone and going 1, 2, 3 plus a little. Yeah, it's definitely going to be long enough. A lot of times you can just eye it up. But I'm just saying, if you're I have this piece, is it long enough? You can go into math mode. But it's really, to me, all of this handmade jewelry, it's like couture. You are making a bezel like a beautiful couture dress or a suit. You're making it to fit the stone you have. Stones vary infinitely. There are very few, even when they're round, that are perfectly round. And who wants that shit anyway? You know what I mean? So think of it that way. Everything you're doing is custom to the piece you're working on, the stone you're working on. So let go of the whole I'm gonna cut my bezel 16.2 millimeters long and that's gonna somehow be, For me, I find this to be the fastest and the easiest, okay? So there's my dissertation on math. It can be your friend, but sometimes it's just a jerk. You know what I mean? Yeah. So once I have my first bend totally correct, usually all I have to do is literally just put my finger on top of it to hold it and bend it with my fingers. This is again the advantage of doing a round or an oval. Okay, now I also use dowels a lot. Dowels are nothing but wood sticks, right? As low tech as it gets. They're hard enough to move the metal, but they won't leave a mark. Any of you who have watched my videos or whatever, my goal in life is to reduce my cleanup. I don't want to sit and file and sand any more than I have to. So I'm always working with a mind of but if I take some metal thing and poke this a lot, I'm gonna have all kinds of little marks. I'm gonna have to file, I'm gonna have to sand, time consuming, and nobody makes jewelry because they're I adore sanding. It's just not a thing. So if I look at this and say, oh, I've got a little gap and I want to push it, I'm literally gonna take my dowel and press on it. I'm gonna stand up. Okay. For example, come over and just look at this from the top and hold it down and you'll see, the shape is sort of okay, but there's a little extra gap in there. I'm gonna have to press that.